It is Thursday, July 29th for Patreon subscribers. And it is, Friday, July 30th for the rest of you. Welcome to Menace to Sports. I am Zach Smith, your host, back and ready to roll. I apologize about the inconsistency in content. I told you it was I kind of was explaining why the last couple episodes, but it doesn't matter. We're back. And I've targeted the first week of August as our kind of content overhaul date. So just mark it down. All of August, we are going to be cranking shit out, starting with 2 episodes a week. All of August, I'm looking at my calendar here. I mean, we're going to go through an Ohio State offensive breakdown, Ohio State defensive breakdown, and then we're going to break down each team in the Big Ten: Indiana, Penn State, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, Rutgers, and Maryland, because I think they're noteworthy with what Mike Locksley and Greg Schiano are doing. I'm going to do an OSU schedule breakdown, an SEC preview, ACC preview, Pac-12 preview, Big 12 maybe preview, and then I'm going to bring, you don't even know it yet, but I'm going to get one of my friends of the program, Shane Larson. Hopefully he will be able to join us and give us kind of a group of 5 breakdown, talk a little bit about the Boise, Idaho, Boise State Broncos, and then the maybe Cincinnati Bearcats. So anyways, a ton of content coming. I've been working on it all summer, kind of for this moment, and here we are. And I also have had a number of, probably more conversations with big-time influential coaches in the Big Ten than I have any year. Capped off with talking with Ryan Day the other day for a long time to kind of get his perspective and what is going on. And it's cool when I happen to run into him because he's a friend of mine, and I do just want to say he's one of the most genuine persons people I've ever met. Whereas if I ran into Urban Meyer right now, he would act like he didn't see me. And Ryan, immediately comes over and gives me a hug, asks how my kids are, how I'm doing, and I just want Buckeye Nation to know that you have a genuine, awesome human being as a head coach. Never mind how fucking he's killing it in recruiting, killing it on the field. I just want you to know genuinely you have a good person running the program. And you don't always know that. I'm telling you right now, I've been around college football coaches that are Eddie Haskell, in the media, they seem like great dudes. And then behind closed doors, they're shitbags or assholes or selfish. I just want you to know you have a big time dude running the program. So just sleep well at night knowing that. And how about Buckeye football is about to kick off 35 days from today, 34 days from tomorrow if you're not a Patreon subscriber. And I want to tell you, tailgates are back. I got something huge I'm working on. And I told you last year was going to be huge and COVID fucked it up. But this year's going to be monstrous. So go ahead and shoot me an email if you're interested. I'll make sure you get on the email list, get all the info. It's Zach@menace2sports.com, ZACH. But we are working on an Oregon tailgate and probably a Penn State tailgate. And who knows, if the Oregon one goes well enough, we just might say fuck it and do all the games. But Braxton Miller, Troy Smith, partnering with Menace to Sports, we're going to have a slate of entertainment for the pregame show. Braxton will be there. Troy will be there. Obviously, I'll be there. The whole Menace to Sports, Menace to Picks team. I'm going to have to get my guys over at Scarlet and Great involved and going to also bring in some big names to come on. Kirk Barton probably and Buckeye Scoop will be involved in some form or fashion. He doesn't even know it yet. I haven't even told him. But it's going to be big time. I know he's a good friend of Troy, played with him. So anyways, at the Point on Lane, right next to Varsity Club, it's going to be monstrous. It's going to benefit the Earl and Jean Bruce charitable benefits, Alzheimer's research. It's going to be big time. So plenty more details to come. Not going to bore you about all that. Also, the fall content, I already mentioned it, 2 shows a week. Almost trying to do a YouTube episode every day. If not, we'll get 3 or 4 a week for sure, minimally. Once we get closer to season, kick back off our Sunday night call-in show, and then the live streams during the fall with a halftime call-in show is going to be huge. I'm going to try to do every game. It's going to be hard to do the Oregon and Penn State games because I'm going to be at an event, but who knows? I might have a booth set up and we might do it there, so don't count that out yet. And Patreon's getting a full revamp. I appreciate the people that have supported the show even through the kind of lull in content. But anyways, check it out. Check out patreon.com/menace to sports. If you're into gambling, football season is here. Get to Menace to Picks right now on social media or patreon.com/menace to picks for the most ridiculous sports handicapping in the market. It's cheap as shit too. For $15 you get infinity locks, blah, 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 blah. You check it out. If you're a gambler, I'm telling you, it's great advice and kind of gives you a guide so that you can become a more effective gambler. And with the football coming, boys, it's time to get back into that saddle and lose money. No, not with us. With us, you'll win money, I promise you. So anyways, enough about that. That was 5 minutes to kind of get through what I needed to get through. Enough about that. Let's get to the show.
What a hit! Denzel Ward! You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me? Hurt my feelings.
You'll be pleased to know this is the last time I'm hosting. I don't care anymore. I'm joking. I never did.
Braxton Miller's loose spin move. Miller heading for the end zone.
You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world.
He'll run it after the 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
Lucky for me, the press can barely speak English.
But they are who we thought they were.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State's Jalen Watts Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game. Unbelievable.
Well, then get the fuck out of here then. Okay, see ya.
All right, first things first. Let's kick this thing off right. I want to talk about just a little the feelings in Buckeye Nation. And I've said it before, and it's what makes Ohio State great. But the expectations in Columbus and in Buckeye Nation are absurdly high. They were never this high under Jim Tressel. They were never this high at John Cooper. Now with my grandfather, Urban set the bar, and he did the same shit at Florida. The expectations became outrageous. He won 2 national titles at Florida and then almost made it back the next year, and people wanted, they wanted half the coaches fired in 2009 when we lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game, because you get a taste of winning, and you get a fan base that's as passionate as Buckeye fans are, and they just become obsessed. It's like a drug. They become addicts for success. And so the expectations are so ridiculously high that right now, the staff is really feeling it, and they should feel it, right? That's why you get paid the big bucks. But the expectations in Buckeye Nation are just absurd. And I talked about it a little bit before. I'm going to say it again. There's going to be a rookie quarterback and a young, inexperienced defense rolling out to start the year, and they start with at Minnesota, a conference game on the road at night on a Thursday, and come back and play Oregon at home at noon. That's the start to this season leaves no room for error. Where if you play some years like 2012, right, when we played, who we played? Miami of Ohio, UAB, Buffalo. We played some. But not Buffalo, but we played some below average, some MAC teams, some preseason games, some warm-up games. So they get those warm-up games after the 2 games start, right? They go at Minnesota, Oregon, and I don't want to go through this whole thing because I'm going to do a full schedule breakdown and talk about each game. But starting the year at Minnesota and coming back 9 days later and playing Oregon at home, and a team that really didn't have a real season last year. And I'm telling you, Mario Cristobal is a great football coach. They're going to be a really, really good football team. And Kayvon Thibodeau is the best defensive player in the country, and it's not even close. And I don't know if you saw his interview, but he was showing off his rings, and they said, where'd he get his watch? And he said, courtesy of the NIL, name, image, and likeness, because that kid's making bank. Did you guys see Bryce Young, the quarterback that's going to play at Alabama? It was reported that he's already made over $800,000 on name, image, and likeness revenue. And Saban even said, this is unbelievable. This guy's never played a snap. He hasn't played at Alabama. He's never been the starter at Alabama, and he's already almost made 7 figures. So college football is changing, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But anyways, so they got to go Minnesota, Oregon out the gate, and I think the expectations need to be tentative. Here's the other thing that you need to realize about some of these expectations of these freshmen. Let's say Travion Henderson is a great example of one, right? Huge recruit, 5-star, all everything. The kid hasn't played football in 2 years because of COVID. So not only is he making an unbelievable jump from high school football, where he's the best player in the world in every field he ever played on, to a world where everyone is that good, but he also hasn't played football in almost 2 years. So for you to expect a true freshman to come in here and make some crazy impact like a Jack Sawyer, JTT, Travion Henderson, Emeka Egbuka, it doesn't matter, Marvin Harrison Jr., any of these players. I'm not saying they're not going to be good. I'm not saying they won't make an impact. But this is the least likely year ever for a freshman to come in and make a significant impact. Keep that in mind. Get some perspective. Just because they were 5 stars and recruiting was insane to get them, and we wore Hawaiian shirts to the airport, the whole staff met him at John Glenn International, it doesn't mean the kid is going to be ready to be Chase Young. We need to get that through our heads. Now, is there concern that Ryan Day won't have a quarterback ready? Absolutely not. Is that quarterback going to be Quinn Ewers? I believe it is. And I pseudo called it before. I said whoever's they announces the guy, doesn't matter. Quinn Ewers will be here soon, and he will be the guy. And now that all this is coming out, and Quinn Ewers is skipping his senior year, it's been all but confirmed to me from people that really know, people that really know, not just some message board, that he is skipping his senior year and coming to Ohio State, going to be here for training camp. And guess what happened when that was announced? All 3 quarterbacks were freaking out, contacting the coaching staff, contacting people, trying to figure out what you do. Don't be surprised if someone jumps in the portal very, very soon. There's going to be Jack Miller will be in that portal within the next 2 weeks. I'll put money on that right now. Jack Miller, when Quinn Ewers shows up, Jack Miller will be in that portal before August 14th, 2021. There you go. You can't have 4 quarterbacks and get 4 guys reps. You can't. So who doesn't get reps? Tell me that. Kyle McCord, unbelievable passer. Ryan Day is a passing guy. He's getting reps. CJ Stroud is the number 1 right now. He's getting reps. Quinn Ewers, he's not going to get reps? Come on, man. You know he's going to get reps because he's probably going to be the guy. He's the most talented one of all of them. He's generational. He's like Trevor Lawrence 2.0 with a mullet. Like, this kid is a bona fide badass. He's going to make $1 million this year even if he doesn't play. So I just don't see how Jack Miller even gets in the mix. You can't rep out 4 guys. The reality is you can't even rep out 3 guys. I mean, they'll try for a week, and then once they identify the 2 guys who are going to battle it out, a week into training camp, the top 2 guys, Quinn Ewers and CJ Stroud, I would guess, or Kyle McCord at this point, now that you don't have to keep Quinn Ewers happy. So it might be Kyle McCord and Quinn Ewers battling for the job after 7 days of training camp. And then you're going to see CJ Stroud and Jack Miller probably jump ship. If I had to predict anything, that's what I'd predict. CJ Stroud or Kyle McCord versus Quinn Ewers to get the job. And if I was picking, it would be Kyle McCord and Quinn Ewers. Now, CJ Stroud has a little different curveball there because he's a great athlete, so don't count that out, but it'll be interesting to see. So anyways, big games this year at Indiana. They come off a bye before they go play Indiana, which is going to be huge, and then Penn State at home, but back-to-back with Indiana, that's going to be a bitch. And then right after that to go at Nebraska, big year for Scott Frost. We'll talk about that in the Nebraska episode, but a lot's going to happen. It's going to be a big year, and you got to finish the game with a win over Harbaugh at the team up north and get him fired. He'll be fired then. After Ohio State beats him for the 80th time in a row at home, after he made all these changes and has all these motivations all offseason, Harbaugh will get fired after the year. That's my other prediction, and it's going to be a hell of a year. But I just wanted to get that out there, kind of give you my thoughts on the quarterback position with Quinn Ewers coming in, which I've heard is definitely happening. But I'm not a reporter or rumor guy. I've been told by some people that probably know. And I think he's going to come in. So, and then also the schedule and expectations. I always want to kind of curb expectations because Buckeye Nation is the absolute worst, but best about it. So enough about that. I want to talk a little bit about this Big 12 conference shakeup and some of the other stuff going down. The conference shakeup of all shakeups. This is an even bigger deal than back when the SEC expanded and added Missouri and added Texas A&M. And then if you remember when the Big East dissolved after Miami ran for the hills. And there's been conference realignments in the past, but none felt as monumental as what is about to happen. You're about to have 2 blue bloods. I mean, the founders of the Big 8 conference, now the Big 12 conference, even though there's 10 teams, it's still called the Big 12, which now there will be 8. So do the math on that. The founders, I mean, Texas and Oklahoma, the 2 backbones of that conference are leaving and going to the SEC. And the landscape of college football will never be the same. The changes that are being made this year are, bar none, the most impactful changes to happen in one singular year. There's been big ones, right? The advent of the 85 scholarship limit, obviously the conference changes that we just talked about, the addition of the college football playoff, or even the BCS. Computers ran the postseason. There's been big changes, but we're talking about college football playoff expansion. We're talking about name, image, and likeness, players getting paid. Shit, Quinn Ewers is 100% skipping his senior year. I have it confirmed from a source at Ohio State. He is skipping. He's coming. He will be there for training camp. not playing. He's foregoing his senior year in high school like he is a college player going to the NFL. Think about that. That is happening right now. And on top of that, we're having a shakeup like we've never seen. Oklahoma and Texas jump ship from the Big 12. And I just want to touch on a couple things. One, how did this happen? Right? ESPN is now running college football. And really, everyone is letting them. The Big Ten is letting them. Fox is letting them. Fox Sports is letting ESPN run college football. And it all started back in 2011 when the SEC added Texas A&M and Missouri. There was a huge dispute with CBS. It was the SEC on CBS, if you don't remember. And they refused to cut in Missouri and Texas A&M on the TV contract deal. So the SEC was livid. They were livid. So that is why now ESPN is the sole. They have all the SEC games. SEC Games Week, they are the SEC network, essentially. They own the SEC network. They are the SEC national network. That is how ESPN and SEC got in bed together, right? It's like CBS. I don't know why I have these marriage analogies, but it's like CBS and the SEC were married, and it was just a bad, awful marriage. Neither was happy. They both wanted to have an affair. They both wanted to leave each other. They both ended up getting a divorce, and ESPN jumped straight into bed with the SEC. And so when they did, the SEC put a clause in their contract that if they were to add a quote-unquote A-list team or potentially even a B-list team, that they would get immediately cut in on the television deal. So now they could go out and aggressively recruit, or not if you listen to Commissioner Sankey, they didn't recruit. They just got a phone call from Texas and Oklahoma on a three-way. They could offer an actual dollar amount immediately if that team was to join the SEC. That's huge. That's why this was able to happen. And it's what does it mean for the Big 12? So the Big 12 TV contract has a clause that says the TV networks can drop their revenue if a team leaves. It's being reported that networks could drop their per-school revenue from $37 million to $9 million per school. Think about that. That's brutal. Big 10 schools right now each make $54 million. The Big 8 is going to make $9 million a school. I mean, we all know that the Big 8, it's going to go away. That's not going to happen. But if they're trying to salvage a conference that their payout right now is $9 million. Who wants to join the Big 12 right now? I mean, maybe San Jose State, New Mexico State. Like, no big school is going to leave the Pac-12 or the Big 10 or anywhere to go to the Big 8 or whatever they're going to be called, the Big 12. The Big 12 is broke. It is done. And you see it right now. We're going to talk to Daniel Lust here from Conduct Detrimental. He's going to give us all the legal, perspective on what is going on in this crazy situation where Bob Bowlesby or whatever the hell the guy's name is, the Big 12 commissioner, is publicly threatening ESPN, and ESPN is basically saying, that didn't happen. You don't have any proof. Shut up. And he's really at his last straw. He has no other option, nowhere else to turn. And the reality is this, that AAC is literally in a better place and is a better conference than the Big 8 right now. And yes, I'm going to call them the Big 8 because that is what they used to be. My grandfather coached in that league at Iowa State. Now, what does this mean for Texas and Oklahoma? Number one, Steve Sarkisian's been there. He was at Bama, OC, knows the conference, knows that they just stepped into the arena. I mean, it's going to be dogfight after dogfight after dogfight. This is welcome to the big leagues, Lincoln Riley. You are about to step into a whole different world. You have no idea what you're getting into. You're not going to play Kansas State, Oklahoma State, some of these teams that Oklahoma, it's almost like Ohio State through the Big Ten Conference. You're not going to play that. You're going to be playing LSU, A&M, Bama consecutive weeks. That's how it's going to go. Throw in a Georgia or a Florida here and there. You're going to play really, really, really good teams. It's just different in the SEC. And there's also a big difference for people that are looking at Texas and Oklahoma's record against the SEC. First of all, most of those games were against A&M when they were in the Big 12, so scratch that. Don't count that. Not to mention, you can't say against one team. You need to look at the conference. The other problem is this. There is a big, big, big difference between playing Alabama in a bowl game with a month to prepare and the dynamics of bowl preparation than there is to playing Alabama week 7 in the middle of your season. You have 6 days to prepare for these teams, and they're back to back to back. If you've ever been in like a bar fight, it's like you fight one guy, you turn around and you're like, holy shit, another guy's coming. And you just have to go after him. And it's just nonstop until you get done with the season and can take a deep breath. It is different than the Big 12. Now, everyone wants to ask, and I'm really curious, what is the Big 10 going to do? I mean, the Big 10, this is a pivotal moment in college football history. This is when conferences make decisions that change the trajectory for not only those conferences, but its members. And Ohio State, if Gene Smith is not ready to swing a big stick now, I don't know when he ever will. Because this is the time Ohio State needs to dictate what happens to this conference. They can't rely on Penn State and Michigan and these other schools, Wisconsin, Iowa. You can't rely on them to pave the path towards being a great elite conference. On other note, for what I've heard is, as Texas and Oklahoma were looking to part ways with the Big 12, the Big 10 never really got into serious conversations with them because they wanted Texas, they didn't want Oklahoma because of academic prowess. Like, what the fuck are we talking about? These presidents should be shot. We don't want Oklahoma in the Big 10. I think everyone does. Everyone wants that. Every student, every graduate, every sports fan, everybody wanted Oklahoma in the Big 10. Who wouldn't want that? But Big 10 needs to do something. They need to strengthen their conference, strengthen their foothold, because whether you want to believe it or not, being in the SEC, especially now the Super SEC, whatever you want to call them, the SSSE, the SSEC, the Super SEC is going to matter to recruits. And I always talk about recruits because that is all that matters. Recruits. They need to strengthen this conference. And so who would that be for the Big Ten? I mean, there's a lot of talk about Iowa State. Iowa State is obviously in the same state as Iowa. They're kind of a Big Ten brand of football. They have Matt Campbell there, who is a Midwest guy. He's an Ohio guy, Mount Union. Just, they scream Midwest brand, right? They scream Big Ten style of football. So that's one candidate a lot of people were talking about. The one that I think they need to add right now is Cincinnati. Cincinnati was the 7 in the sorority that got left out when they went to the frat party, right? When the Big East dissolved, West Virginia, Louisville, they're all finding these deals, finding these conferences, and Cincinnati was sitting there like, what the hell, man? We've been competitive in the Big East. Why can't we find a home? And they didn't, so they got stuck in the AAC and were, I guess, demoted to Group of 5 football. And I think it's time that they become a Power 5 team. I mean, Ohio has solid enough football. There's no reason that the state of Ohio is a one Power 5 school state. They can have two. Cincinnati is the candidate. They're who you should bring in. And I think that with Luke Fickell there, you elevate them to the Big Ten, and all of a sudden now, I mean, shit, it's a better ad than Rutgers was, right? It's probably a better ad, maybe not than Nebraska, but it would be a better ad overall than Kansas would be, is the other school they're talking about. Now, I get it. Kansas has other sports too. Their basketball would be phenomenal in the Big Ten. It would only, I mean, you imagine adding Cincinnati and Kansas to the Big Ten conference and what that basketball conference would look like. Holy shit. It'd be the SEC football conference in basketball, right? The hardest basketball conference in the world. It would be insane. So I think that's what needs to happen. We know it probably won't happen. Kevin Warren is just going to sit on his ass like he did with COVID and let the whole fucking world run us over. But coming from a guy who wants the Big Ten to at least be on par with the SEC, that's all I want. I think they deserve that. I think that's one of the problems that needs to happen. Also, another thing that needs to happen, in talking to a big-time head coach in the state of Ohio just the other day that you all know and love, ran into him, and we had like an hour conversation. One of the things we talked about is the state of Ohio not allowing and not having 7-on-7, right? No spring ball, no 7-on-7. Ohio right now is in shambles when it comes to developing athletes, and it's because you look at a high school athlete, right? You have 4 years in high school. That means you have 4 seasons. In Texas, Georgia, Florida, California, these other states, they have 8 football seasons. They have a spring, albeit a 7-on-7 or actual spring football, and then they have a fall. So they're getting twice the development. We want to make the brand of the Midwest and the Big Ten better. We need to let these kids play football more. It's not that fucking hard. Let them play more, and they'll get better faster. They'll be a better product, better players, and then guess what? Michigan State's better. Michigan's better. Penn State's better. Everyone is better in the footprint. The other school that I think needs squeezed and just absolutely forced into a conference is Notre Dame. Enough's enough. What the ACC did last year to just let them out of get out of jail free card without any commitment was absolutely putrid. I mean, I get it was to grab a couple bucks, But that was a perfect opportunity to put Notre Dame in their place as an average at best Power 5 big-time job. Average at best big-time job. How about that? That's what should have happened, didn't happen. Thank you, ACC, for fucking that up. But anyways, I want to get to Daniel Lust. Don't want to ramble forever. That's kind of my thoughts on the situation. That's what Ohio State needs to do. That's what Gene Smith needs to do. It's what Kevin Warren needs to do. That's what the Big Ten needs to do. They need to start grabbing some teams and some quality teams, right, with trajectories in the right direction. And I named the two I would think. Cincinnati, Iowa State. West Virginia would be phenomenal. I don't see that happening. They're a much better fit and seem more likely to jump to the ACC, if anywhere. But if the ACC comes about as a conference with some teams like Clemson's and Miami's and teams like that want to leave, I mean, you could be looking at 2 super conferences in 5 years. But just think about the landscape of college football in 5 years. It's going to be a totally different game, totally different picture than what we have known it to be for the 37 years of my life. But I'm going to bring on Daniel Lust. We want to get to the contract part of this, and not the contract, the sports law part of this, because I think this is going to be very educational for me and all of our listeners, is hearing Daniel talk about kind of what this all means from the legal perspective from a lawyer. So here we go with Daniel Lust. All right, we're going to welcome back Daniel Lust, our sports law liaison, we'll call you, to the show to tell us what in the hell is going on with the Big 12 and ESPN. So first of all, Daniel, thank you for joining us.
My absolute pleasure to come on, Zach. And, when we have college football news, I had a feeling I was going to get a call from you.
It's usually what happens, right? I feel like I'm a pretty smart guy in general, but when something like this breaks, I'm like, all right, I need Daniel to come on and tell me what the hell this means, because it's just so kind of bizarre. I mean, not only is it bizarre, the landscape and all the changes, but now some of the legal stuff that's going on. So I want to start and talk about, I already talked about kind of what has went on, right? Oklahoma and Texas are parting ways with the Big 12, going to the SEC. Seems like some shady business went on there, and a lot of things with the SEC commissioner, and he didn't have any conversations. They reached out to him, just a lot of contracts that had to be kind of worried about, right? And now the breaking news is the Big 12 sent a cease and desist letter, which you could talk about that, because I've sent one before and I've received one from the University of Texas and Tom Herman. And I know they're literal toilet paper. They don't mean anything. It's basically like, hey, please shut up. That's the extent of it. So the Big 12's pissed. And now there's conversation or rumors that ESPN has been in conversation with at least one confirmed team that is currently in the Big 12, not Oklahoma and Texas, about joining the AAC and strengthening that conference. And I'm curious, 2 things. 1, what do you think is going on here? And 2, what does the Big 12 have at their disposal to do to ESPN? Like, are they really going to sue ESPN?
I see this in my hand, Zach, and I'm holding. These are imaginary straws. That's what they're grasping.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's 2 legal terms that we need to know for this, and I'll try to spare you. I'll make them very simple, right? The first one is a concept called anticipatory breach. You can kind of, right? What's an anticipatory catch? You kind of know that it's coming, right? And you got to kind of throw it into a window, right? Similar concept here. You can't, if you have a contract that's coming up, right? The Texas and Oklahoma grant of rights deal goes through 2025. If they do something that affirmatively breaches the contract, they'll be held in what's called anticipatory breach, that they've done something that seems to have violated the terms of that deal before it expired. So that's number one. When you're reading the statements, number one from the SEC and Greg Sankey, look very closely at that statement, right? He's saying we didn't, I think the language was like, we didn't induce them to come over, which we'll talk about in a minute. But from Oklahoma and Texas perspective, listen, if you're just looking at statements, right? I've seen a lot of statements from conference commissioners, from schools. I rarely see a statement, if ever, I can't recall it, a dual one from 2 schools, from Oklahoma and Texas. So that tells you, right, that Oklahoma and Texas are talking. Oklahoma and Texas would like you to believe that they haven't spoke to the SEC, and the SEC would like you to believe they haven't spoke to Oklahoma and Texas. Right. But how did the whole thing get pieced together if no one's speaking to anyone, right? This is like the wink and nod, like LeBron James isn't tampering with free agents. Like, okay, but how did the contracts worked out perfectly? Like, it makes no sense. So I guess number one, people are looking very closely at Oklahoma and Texas to see what they did wrong. If the Big 12 can try to hold them in breach of their deal and say, hey, you guys anticipatorily breached this contract. So that's number one, and I'm sure you've spoke about it. Under the Big 12 bylaws to leave, I think the number that's being reported, each school would have to pay at least a floor of $76 million, and that number could be as high as $100 million. So wow. Schools make a lot of money. I think Texas's annual budget last year was close to $200 million, but you're not going to have $100 million liquid, right? It's going to take some time to put that together. So maybe, right, when they're saying, hey, we're going to the statement, I'm sure you went over it, was we're going to honor our rights deal until 2025. Maybe, they're saving 20 million here, 20 million here, and then they can pay that out at some point. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's really the landscape we're dealing with. And the other term, and then Zach, I'll give it back to you, and then we can kind of flesh it out, is something called tortious interference with contract. So I keep referencing this Big 12 contract that Texas and Oklahoma have with the Big 12. Now, it looks like they're about to breach it. I mean, they can say we're going to wait until 2025. I'm not sure anyone believes that. So, okay, if they're going to leave the contract early, did someone interfere, what's called a tortious interference, and cause them to break it early? Now, maybe it was the SEC. I think that's a logical, accuser here or someone that made a crime here. And the other one that popped out of nowhere, Zach, ESPN. Did ESPN interfere with this contract? That's just a wild card that I don't think anyone expected in it.
I think it's just, when I look at it, this is the best way I can think of this scenario, right? It's almost like Texas and Oklahoma had an affair with the SEC, right? They were married, they had an affair, and the SEC's best friend is ESPN, and somehow the best friend is getting blamed for the affair. And it's like, I guess my question is this: can ESPN be held, I don't know, in some violation and have to pay some fiscal penalty because they coerced this to happen and now coerced this AAC strengthening? That's my first part of the question. And second part is, what are they doing? Are they not financially invested in the Big 12 as well? Are they mad at them for something? Like, why are they doing this to the Big 12?
Well, Zach, you missed a very important legal term here. Allegedly coerced.
Allegedly.
Anything, right?
Right.
ESPN this really fancy statement, and like Bowlesby's going out, he's throwing haymakers, he's taking the gloves off, he's dropping, one after the other. I'm seeing these bombshell tweets, and ESPN responds, "There was no merit to those claims." I'm like, okay, ESPN could have come out swinging a little bit there, but
right.
So yeah, ESPN's denying it. I don't. From a financial perspective, obviously ESPN has an affiliation with the SEC, but they also have some type of affiliation with the Big 12. So Then there's the AAC who's allegedly involved here. So it's messy. All I can tell you is this, which seems just from a legal perspective, from a really high level. Right, the Big 12 has sent one cease and desist letter. And a cease and desist letter, you kind of said it's toilet paper, whatever, but it's a warning shot. Like, don't do the thing that you're going to do, or else, there will be consequences.
Right.
So there's another reason. I mean, obviously it's a warning shot that you're going to sue them, right? The other one is a warning shot to, hey, we're the Big 12, right? We used to be the Big 12. We used to actually have 12 schools once upon a time.
Right.
Then we were kind of like the Big 10, but no one's going to call us the Big 10 because we have 10 schools, but whatever. Any of that makes sense. But if you lose Texas and Oklahoma, which I think everyone thinks is going to happen, I think everyone, is on board that this 14-0 unanimous vote is going to happen in the SEC. I think there's a report that Texas A&M is opening them, welcoming with opening arms, right? You have 8 schools left. So Bob Bowlesby's over here and he's saying, like, what can I do here, right? What can I do? I have to do whatever I can at my disposal to save the conference. So Zach, he sends one cease and desist letter. The obvious one to get a cease and desist letter is Greg Sankey over at the SEC.
Right.
The obvious person, right? That's the one, no brainer, right? Those guys probably spoke. Right. But it goes to ESPN, who just seems like an odd target of this. But, maybe Bowlesby's MO was like, hey, if I send a cease and desist to ESPN, that's going to get a lot more headlines than if I just send one to SEC. And maybe people will be aware, stop going after my schools. But yeah, but a kind of risk reward calculus here. You're going after ESPN, the multimedia behemoth. You kind of need ESPN. Like, don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Right. I mean, it's like they're going to, instead of going after the lesser foe, they're going to go after the ghost of Walt Disney, like the most powerful entity in media and sports. Like, and I'm here for it. It's almost, I think you and I talked before, it's like Braveheart, the movie Braveheart, right? And Mel Gibson is the Big 12. Like, the SEC and ESPN murdered their whole family, and they are just burning the boats and here to just take on everybody because they know the end game, right? There's no way the Big 12 exists after losing Oklahoma and Texas. I think I read the revenue share was upwards and over $30 million a school, and with those 2 schools removed, it's going to be around $9 million per school. And so it's just like those teams are, I mean, it's shook up the entire country. I even talked to Ryan Day about it yesterday and how this has just rattled the entire landscape of college football. So I guess what is your understanding of the moves contractually and legally that these schools can now make? If you're now, I don't know, pick a Big 12 team. If you're Oklahoma State, like, what legally can they do? Never mind the Big 12. We already kind of are seeing the Big 12 is just absolutely, just going full sell and going to sue everyone because they know it's over. What does Oklahoma State do if you're sitting in this conference that basically is no longer going to exist. What do you do?
See, I mean, I want to talk about that, but I think, Zach, you're hitting on something that I think we can't make light of, right? The conference might not exist, right? And so, but that's not just like hyperbole. That's, you read the tea leaves. What is Bowlesby doing? There are not that many. There's Fox and there's ESPN. Like, those are the big two, right? And if you're going after one, like, you have one and you have no leverage with the other one. So why do you make an insane move like that? If you were really, like, I made the joke, you're grasping at straws. You said, hey, you know what? Like, if I lose these, and I saw the report, I think it was from Dennis Dodd. He said 3 to 5 schools had been contacted by the AAC, or that the AAC had contacted 3 to 5 remaining of these 8 schools in the Big 12. So I don't know if you're in fear of losing those 3 to 5 schools. Like, Bob Bowlesby's out of a job. There's no commissioner of it, not the big zero, right? There's no salary.
Right.
So that's a really good indication. Bowlesby's going scorched earth. You don't hear comments like this from a conference commissioner unless there's nothing to lose. So that's what his MO is. So, okay, let's go. Where do we go from here, right? There are 8 schools and some really high level schools like Baylor, right? Baylor's an incredible basketball program. Iowa State just coming off a good year. Some schools, a lot of history, like Kansas, you go back. So what do these schools do? So, Zach, I know you probably have following this. You know the Super League stuff going over in soccer?
Yeah.
So it's a similar concept, right? We won't get so far down the rabbit hole, but it's a multi-billion-dollar league, same type of deal. It's a lot of money at stake. And what happened is the Super League over in soccer pulled the most expensive and best clubs in the world from Chelsea and Manchester United and Real Madrid, and they put them in the Super League. So they said, if anybody leaves the Super League, and we have a season without you, and the season actually happens, we can sue you for a lot of money. To the extent the Super League exists, you're being hooked for a lot of money. So, Zach, if you're curious why I'm bringing that up, right? The Big 12 could have a lot of remedies against any schools that leave the conference, including Oklahoma, including Texas, including Baylor, including Iowa State, including Kansas. But if the Big 12 does not exist, there was no lawsuit to be had, right? You're going to get sued by a non-existent entity. So people have said, and I guess before we get to the Oklahoma and states and those guys, like, maybe that was Oklahoma and Texas's MO.
Wow.
Hey, we're not going to breach this contract until 2025. We're not going to do it, but we're going to get out of here, and wink, wink, nod, nod. Hey, other schools, you might want to explore your other options because this conference isn't going to exist in 4 years.
Wow.
So assuming that playbook makes sense and that worked out to plan, Texas and Oklahoma say, hey, we're going to hang until 2025. Yeah, but the conference is not going to exist for another year. So
it's like burning down your own home because then you don't have a home. What else do you want me to do? We have to go to the SEC now because we just dismantled the entire. I never thought about that. That's brilliant, savage, but brilliant.
I spoke to a beat writer. I did his podcast over for Oklahoma, and he thought that was the MO, and I'm like, it's just genius. So then you have Zach, you don't have an affinity for Nebraska Cornhuskers Nation, and they're like sitting on the sidelines like disaster girl with the fire in the background. They're like, we knew it all along. This thing was unshaken around anything.
Looking like they were brilliant, right, for jumping ship.
So I guess go back, right? So what can Oklahoma State, Kansas, any of these schools do, right? Just look exactly at what Oklahoma and Texas just did. So they threatened to leave. If and when they leave, they owe a lot of money, 76 to 100 million, I think, by some reports. That number is probably going to be a little bit less if you play a year without Texas and Oklahoma in the conference, just because those are the big money makers. Right. But I don't know, you threatened to leave, right? And the Big 12, Bob Bowlesby works for the presidents of the conference, right? It's not an independent scenario. It's like Roger Goodell, right? Yeah. The owners, they kind of pay Roger Goodell's salary. So if all of the schools say, hey, we should go our separate ways before 2025, that's it. So Oklahoma and Texas sent a really big signal, but they did it in a really smart way. And they said, hey, we're not doing anything wrong. We're not leaving, but we're going to explore options 2025. And we're about to be accepted into the SEC if and when we decide to actually leave. So I think it's a brilliant move, a really smart one. And that's why you've seen Bowlesby kind of go off the rails.
That makes entire sense. And I think what with the AAC's involvement, the one thing that I keep thinking about is back when the Big East kind of dissolved, right? And you had teams like Cincinnati that were on the outside looking in, right? They were in the Big East conference. They were, on the up and up per se. And then when the conference shifting started happening, they got left out. They got left out of the Power 5 conferences. They ended up in the AAC. And you have schools like that are right now seeing this as an opportunity to kind of get revenge on the politics involved. And for Cincinnati, who is probably the patriarch of the AAC right now with Luke Fickell, and them being able to try to coerce the Baylors of the world to come to the AAC and dismantle the Big 12. I mean, you could see West Virginia back in the AAC, I guess. Is it the new Big East? I don't. Or does the Big Ten get involved? That's my next question is, where is the Big Ten in all of this, right? I think everyone knows my feelings on Kevin Warren. He's certainly not making any moves. I think he just found out about this morning, right? A day later. And so he's not making any moves. We know that. But what can the Big Ten do in this landscape, right? This is opportunity. When things like this happen, there's opportunity, and you're either going to get better or worse. Do you think the Big Ten will do or can do anything on the legal side of this to try to add a couple teams or strengthen their footprint?
Zach, I'm here all day for the Kevin Warren jokes. Just keep it. So I guess as a quick aside, Sports Illustrated reporter Ross Dellinger had this really funny tweet last night. He goes, "I've been told not to assume what will happen when there is a vote that is occurring between presidents in a certain conference." And I'm like, that is a 1,000,000% a shot at Kevin Warren.
Right. Oh, there's no doubt.
1,000,000% a shot. So I guess, well, I have to tell you this one too. So AAC, right? Like what's the conference? It's like, what's the musical chair? So I saw this crazy tweet last night. Zach, did you see it from the Sun Belt Conference?
No.
So funny. They write a tweet just says positive trajectory. And it's basically a press release for how great the Sun Belt Conference is. It's like, I'm not sure who asked you Sun Belt Conference. I'm not sure who asked how great you were doing, but It seems pretty suspicious timing in all of this, that there's about to be a musical chairs. And like, I don't know, Sun Belt Conference is just right. Positive trajectory and just says how great they've been doing and how great. I'm like, this is interesting. Okay, so what does the Big Ten do, right? Because that's I'm partial to all things Big Ten.
Yeah.
It's musical chairs, right? You just saw the SEC go to 16 schools, and on the other end of this, you have the Big 12 with 8 schools. So something's not making sense there. You can't have a Power 5 conference with double the members as the other conference. So something's got to give. Some schools either have to go to the Big 12, or the Big 12 can cease to exist and the other schools can get dispersed. Those are really the only two options here. So I don't know, Big Ten right now is sitting at 14 schools. Could I see them pick up another 2 schools? Yeah, 100% I could. Especially, I think they're with the SEC, I think those are the 2 premier conferences in the country. SEC just went to 16 or, about to go to 16. Like, I don't know, that should seem, if you were run by a competent commissioner, that would seem like a logical step to go toe for toe with the SEC. So then you have to think, who's there for the taking? And it's the same kind of calculation, same kind of finances that you're looking at over in the SEC. And I should mention one thing. There is maybe some type of a narrative that $100 million that would be owed by Oklahoma and Texas, that maybe some portion of it could potentially be picked up by the SEC conference because, hey, we're bringing in a lot to these 2 schools. We're going to make some more money.
Yeah.
No, pay your exit fees. Same type of deal or same type of debate, I think, would occur over at the Big Ten if they were to take, let's say Oklahoma State or whoever. Who's the closest? Kansas would be the closest geographically?
West Virginia, probably, right?
West Virginia, yeah. Probably West Virginia, Kansas. I would imagine those 2, unless I'm not thinking of somebody.
Well, I mean, Kansas definitely has the value in basketball. Iowa State, I think, is a pretty seamless fit. We already have Iowa, right, in the conference. Iowa State would provide an in-state rivalry. They're definitely at the at the peak of their football program in the history, outside of maybe when my grandfather was there in the 70s and won the Big 8, which is now come back to exist, the Big 8. Imagine that. So I could see Iowa State and West Virginia, and Kansas definitely has a case to be made if you're looking at the entire landscape of all sports. And I think you touched on something earlier that we just blew by, and I think this is really where this is headed, in my opinion. This is where I think the Big 12 fell asleep right now. They're trying to battle ESPN the wrong way. They're sending cease and desist letters, like threatening lawsuits. I see this as kind of an ESPN versus Fox future, right? It's almost like AFC, NFC, right? This is, if the Big 12 was smart, they would find a way to kind of partner with the Big 10 or partner with Fox and create this rivalry and kind of 2 segments of college football. That's the 2 powerful entities. And you saw it with Urban Meyer and how pissed he was at ESPN after his whole, or my whole debacle, whatever you want to call it. And then him going to Fox and trying to take on Game Day head to head with the Big Noon Kickoff. And now Fox is trying to become a major player against ESPN. And I think that's the deal, right? Fox is a Big 10. Fox and the Big 10 are married, and the SEC and ESPN are married. So the Big 12 is sitting here and they want to fight the ESPN instead of maybe joining forces with the Big 10 and Fox, right?
Yeah, but I'll defend Bowlesby for a little bit. Maybe that was his plan. I imagine his plan is not to bite the hand that feeds him. That could potentially give him, millions of dollars to save the conference. But it's almost like a scorned lover situation, right? Maybe Bowlesby was looking at ESPN to help him, and then he finds out, and there's this loaded tweet that we saw last night that he has hardcore concrete evidence that ESPN was helping, facilitate conversations between the AAC and some, remaining of these, we'll call it the Big Eight, Zach. I think you and I can make this happen. We'll call it the Big Eight. But I think that's Bowlesby I'm sure didn't want to go scorched earth on ESPN, but if ESPN is threatening the sanctity and the existence of the conference, you take 3 schools away from the Big Eight. I'm telling you, there are Power 5 conferences. I've never heard of a Big 5 conference, right?
No, certainly not.
So I think Bowlesby kind of had to do it. Assuming what we're hearing is true from Bowlesby's side, that ESPN really did this, and I'm seeing it confirmed by some high-level college football reporters that there is some type of sourcing here. I think he kind of had to do it and stop the bleeding. I don't know what other alternative he had.
I don't either. I don't know that he had an alternative. I don't know if there is a course of action that he can take that will end well for the Big 12 regardless. So I want to end on this, and this is the question that I'm asking, and I really don't have an answer for, is legally speaking, can the Big 12 sue ESPN for tampering regardless of what happens, right? Can they sue ESPN for causing all this if they have concrete proof that ESPN was meddling with these schools?
Well, they have to. The short answer is yes. The short answer is that the suit is possible. And you wouldn't see a cease and desist unless it was possible, right? You can't just threaten something that has no teeth to it, or else you look like an idiot on the other end. So you'd have to be some type of breach of the contract. So when I first saw that tweet, I think Pete Thamel had it over Athletic. I read it and I'm like, okay, he sent a cease and desist. It's probably about Texas and Oklahoma. I feel pretty confident that that's what it was about, but it wasn't. The cease and desist was about the remaining schools.
Right.
So we already saw Oklahoma and Texas kind of leave. And we'll say they left. They're about to be voted in, whatever it is, fine.
Yeah.
The other schools, none of them, at least as far as I know, have had any type of, intention to leave, have sent any fancy joint letters, anything like that. If and when that were to occur, I think that's the triggering moment where maybe there is a lawsuit, right? Because there has to be, right, a breach of the contract to have tortious interference with the contract. Right. So Bowlesby, Zach, I know you saw it. I said this looks like he's claiming tortious interference, and then Bowlesby must be consulting with the lawyers. He tweets out tortious interference. So we're on the same page, me and Bowlesby over here.
So you might know what you're talking about here.
I knew that's what it seemed like he was saying. Yeah. And then he went out and said it. So for there to be tortious interference, there has to be a valid contract, and that valid contract has to be broken in some way, shape, or form. Now, Texas and Oklahoma, right? Wink, wink, nod, nod, haven't broken their contract, right? Because they're going to say, oh, we're going to wait it out until 2025. Wink, wink, maybe not. But to the extent that there are some levels, maybe of that other fancy term I said, anticipatory breach, if a Baylor or a Kansas, they do something, improper, and then they'd be held and found of breaching that contract. Yeah, but you need a breach, you need a breaking or violation of the contract to hold in this third party that helped you break it. So it's almost like accomplice to a crime, right? The crime actually has to be committed in some sense, or very close to the commission of the crime in order to hold that the getaway driver liable. So that makes sense. That's kind of what we're looking at here. But the story is just being written.
It's crazy because you have to figure they had to have help from one of these schools. So like that, just kind of reacting to what you just said, it probably, I can't see how that breach would happen if a team's thinking about leaving. That would need to happen. They would need to breach the contract and leave for a crime to be committed, right? But that school has to be helping the Big 12 and giving them this evidence, right? I mean, how else would they acquire the evidence that ESPN was involved without subpoenas or anything else?
Listen, we just watched the Big Ten saga play out. There are really stupid people at some of these schools.
That's a great point. There's no doubt.
So let's not assume anything, right? You had over at the Big Ten, right? People are saying like, how do we hide our emails? It's like, you guys are at a public university. Like, we're going to see that email where you're asking about how to hide your emails, you knucklehead.
Never underestimate incompetence and stupidity at a high level. That's for sure. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Daniel. As always, that was great insight. And it'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out. And I'm sure I'll have questions for you moving forward as we see another year of just sports law just littering all over college football.
Listen, I'm here for it. This is either heaven or hell on earth. It's one of them, but it's a very good time for me.
You know what? Whatever it is, you're right in the middle of it.
I will take it. I'm in the eye of the storm.
I love it.
Always a pleasure. You let me know when. I'm always happy to come back.
That sounds good. Well, make sure you guys check out Daniel at Sports Law Lust on Twitter, and Conduct Detrimental is your show. Tell them where else they can find you.
Yeah, so Conduct Detrimental is our podcast. We have conductdetrimental.com, which is basically a site for anyone if they want to put on their tinfoil legal hat. It's mainly lawyers and judges, but we sometimes we get some feisty college sports fans that have a legal issue that want to talk about it. So we'll say all things sports and law. And then Zach, I'm kind of throwing this on you. Did you see my tweet about I have some news that the Big Ten might not be so happy about?
I did. It was very cryptic. I don't know what it was about though.
Well, I'll give you a little teaser here. So I sat down in front of a video camera and I said, I have some news that Nebraska fans will be very, very happy about, and Big Ten HQ might not be so happy about. So Zach, we'll say exclusive for the show.
Yes.
Ohio State will also be very happy about this news.
Really?
Ohio State will be very happy.
Well, if Buckeye fans and Cornhusker fans, I know I have a bunch of you watching the show. You better follow Daniel Lust on Twitter, because it sounds like that'll be some news that everyone will be excited to hear at the very least.
Those are my two favorite fan bases, and I'm not just saying that because it's you. Those are my two favorite fan bases, the two most passionate in the conference.
There's no doubt. They were right, and I'll tell you what, they love your work when they were trying to fight the Big Ten. So I appreciate you coming on, Daniel, as always, and we will definitely have you back.
Thanks, Zach. Always a pleasure.
All right, we'll see you. All right, there you have it. Daniel Lust, always appreciate him coming on. I love the kind of crew of liaisons, I'll call them, because they don't work for me. They don't work for the platform, but they're friends of the platform and guys that really understand, all sports really, but they give they have great value. Daniel Lust gets unbelievable value. Just his knowledge on law, his presence on camera and on a mic, and then also just like his ability to relate to the average sports fan and not sound like a nerdy attorney. I mean, he's excellent, man. I'm glad I found him. Glad we have become we've connected and become some kind of friends, and really appreciate him coming on. Always a pleasure. I'm going to reach out and lean on him quite a bit. It's always good to have a sports law perspective on the show, and I have some cool medical perspectives coming up. And in the offseason, I got some awesome player development, athlete development contacts that I've made that are going to be big time. So anyways, just wanted to bring that up and have that conversation. So anyways, this is kind of the preview, the Spur random episode. We're kicking off live next week, 2 episodes a week, trying to do 5 YouTube episodes a week. Patreon's going to get loaded up. We're gearing back up for football season, man. So it's time, man. It's time. 2021 season is about to kick off. The preseason's here. Training camp's starting. Let's do it, man. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you were educated, entertained, or provided something, right? Took up an hour of your time and made it less miserable or a little bit better. Hope you had a drink and enjoyed the show, whatever you do. But if you didn't, as we say, go fuck yourself, San Diego.
What a hit! Denzel Ward! You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
You'll be pleased to know this is the last time I'm hosting. I don't care anymore. I'm joking. I never did.
Braxton Miller's loose spin move. Miller heading for the end zone.
You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world.
He'll run it after the 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
Lucky for me, the press can barely speak English.
But they are who we thought they were.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State's Jalen Watts-Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game. Unbelievable.
Well, then get the fuck out of here then. Okay, see ya.